Bonjour, je m'appelle David Naftzger et je suis le directeur exécutif de la conférence des gouverneurs et des premiers ministres des Grands Lacs et du Saint-Laurent. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm David Naftzger, the executive director for the Conference of Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers. It's a pleasure to be here on the occasion of the Leadership Summit of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers. First, let me begin by introducing those that are joining me on the stage. First, our host, the Premier of Quebec, François Legault. Next, the Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. The Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. The Governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers. The Director of Agriculture and Rural Development for the state of Michigan, Tim Boring. The Director for the Environmental Protection Agency for the state of Ohio, John Logue. The Assistant Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, Peter Cheseth. The Chief Executive Officer for the Ports of Indiana, Jody Peacock. The Deputy Secretary for the New York Agriculture and Environment, Ashley Doherty. And Governor Pritzker's appointee to the Regional Body and Compact Council, Lauren Wobig. So the way we'll be doing things is we'll have a series of presentations from the governors and from the premiers. I'll then invite questions from the media that are here in the room with us. We'll then recognize those that are joining us remotely. So to begin, I would like to invite remarks from our host, Quebec Premier François Legault. Premier Legault.
Thank you. Merci. Bien sûr, je suis très content de tous vous recevoir ici dans la belle ville de Québec. I would like especially to thank Josh Shapiro for being here, the governor of Pennsylvania, Tony Evers, governor from Wisconsin, and my friend Doug Ford, Premier Ministre de l'Ontario, and all the delegates from different states are members. Thank you for being in Quebec City. Je vais y aller en français. On a bien sûr parlé, puis c'est l'objectif premier du sommet, de la santé des Grands Lacs et du Saint-Laurent, du transport maritime sur le Saint-Laurent. Mais je ne vous cacherai pas que depuis samedi, on s'est beaucoup parlé d'économie dans un contexte où c'est difficile actuellement pour toute l'économie canadienne à cause des tarifs, puis à cause de l'incertitude aussi qui est amenée par le président des États-Unis. J'ai mis de l'avant que le Québec peut aider dans plusieurs secteurs, entre autres avec ce qui se passe en Ukraine, ce qui se passe un petit peu à certains endroits dans le monde. Tous les pays vont investir de façon importante en défense. On a des entreprises, comme une pas très loin, qu'on a visitée. Là, je vois le ministre Ski qui est allé avec certains des gouverneurs visiter le chantier naval de Davie, qui peut fabriquer effectivement des navires, des brise-glaces, des corvettes. Donc, et on a une belle entreprise au Québec qui s'appelle Bombardier, puis un secteur de l'aviation, puis la partie de défense, évidemment, va beaucoup se développer. On a aussi beaucoup parlé, puis je sais que Doug va en parler aussi, on a beaucoup de minéraux critiques au Canada. Puis actuellement, les États-Unis, dans plusieurs domaines, sont dépendants de la Chine, veulent être plus indépendants de la Chine. Donc, le Canada, c'est une belle alternative pour s'approvisionner dans plusieurs minéraux critiques. Bon, j'ai été content. On a eu aussi la visite de la gouverneure de New York, de la gouverneure aussi du Michigan, les deux qui sont encore ici ce matin. Puis j'ai entendu tous les représentants américains dire on doit travailler ensemble en économie, le Canada et les États-Unis. Donc, je veux remercier les organisateurs de la réunion. Je pense que c'est un beau succès. Et donc, merci tout le monde d'être ici.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. It's now my honor to invite to the stage our newly elected chair of the Conference of Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
Bonjour. I think for the benefit of Premier Ford, I'll give my remarks in English, but I want to thank Premier Legault for being an outstanding host here in Quebec City, and we are looking forward to welcoming all of you to Erie, Pennsylvania in 2027. Even though that's 2 years away, we'll begin planning right away, and I can tell you that there is a lot of work that needs to happen between now and then, work that we are all committed to doing together, the premiers and the governors, to strengthen the ties between our two countries, between our states and our provinces. It is my honor to be elected by my colleagues to serve as chair of this important organization, an organization that I believe is essential right now, given the strain in the relationship between the United States and Canada due to the policies of the federal administration in Washington, D.C. We are all committed to strengthening our economic ties, to making sure that we are doing sustainable agriculture, to make sure that we're addressing invasive species like Asian carp and keeping them out of our waterways to ensure the vitality of our Great Lakes and St. Lawrence. Now more than ever, we have to find ways to collaborate and cooperate. I want you to hear this from me. I respect Canadians and I respect Canada's sovereignty, and I will do everything in my power as chairman of this organization to make sure that mutual respect carries the day, that partnerships are strengthened, and that our economic bonds are not shattered, torn apart, but rather strengthened. This is a moment for important action by this organization, and I'm privileged to be able to work with all of my colleagues to be able to do this important work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Shapiro. I'd now like to invite remarks from Ontario Premier Doug Ford.
First of all, it's great to be here, and my good friend François, we've been working together for a number of years. I always tell François I love the Quebecers, they're passionate and spent a lot of time here. Do you know I spent a lot of time skiing? You'd never think with my physique, but when I was younger, we used to go to Mount St. Anne all the time. I also want to welcome our great colleagues and closest friends and allies from the U.S., Governor Evers, and I also spent a tremendous amount of time in Wisconsin. I spent 20 years of my life in Chicago, and I told Governor I was up there 2-3 times a week, and along with our facility in just outside of Philadelphia, in Pennsauken, New Jersey. And I want to congratulate Governor Shapiro, being a chair. He's a strong leader. We're going to work with him and collaborate and cooperate every which way we can to create economic prosperity for both sides of the border. You know, folks, we've had a relationship for over a couple hundred years, and you see the trade between us. I can just speak for Ontario. If Ontario was a standalone country, which I never recommend, we'd be the U.S.'s third largest trading partner in the entire world, next to Mexico and China. But we're the #1 export destination for 17 states, #2 to 9 other states. And I want to grow that. I want to make sure that we grow that, create the AMCAN fortress. You saw a report from BMO that came out regarding the Great Lakes corridor and the St. Lawrence corridor. There's over $9 trillion of economic output right there. And we have to grow on that. And we're very diverse in Ontario. We do approximately $220 billion of two-way trade, Ontario alone, with the U.S. states right across the board. And one sector is the auto sector. And I always say you can't unscramble an egg. You have to make that omelet larger. The auto pact's been around since 1960. You know, President Trump wants to come after the jobs and create uncertainty, not only in Canada, but across the world. And maybe he should be looking at China. China is the problem. Canada is not the problem. We're your closest allies, closest friends. We stood shoulder to shoulder in wars for decades beside each other. And I can tell you one thing, Canadians love Americans, absolutely love Americans. I have a tremendous amount of friends, close friends. As I said, I spent 20 years of my life down in Illinois. And even Republicans, they aren't too happy with what President Trump is doing. So make no mistake about it, it's not everyone else. It's one person causing these problems. Rather than put the AMCAN fortress in, a ring around America and the U.S., America and Canada, and make it the strongest, most resilient, wealthiest, safest jurisdictions in the world, he'd rather come after us. I've never seen anything like it. It's unacceptable. We will never be the 51st state. We'll always be your best friend, your closest trading partner. And again, I just want to thank all the governors. I know some couldn't make it. We have great relationships with Minnesota and Illinois and Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State, and Quebec and Ontario. Just think of that corridor. That's an economic powerhouse the world has not seen, the U.S. has not seen, and Canada. Those states and those two provinces do the greatest amount to your GDP, both countries, than any other jurisdiction. And we're going to continue building that. Even though President Trump thinks protectionism is great. Well, why doesn't he look into what Ronald Reagan said many years ago about protectionism? It sounds great for a little bit, but what it does, it creates inflation. That's what it does. And we're seeing inflation already in both countries. It decreases competition. It just does not work anywhere in the world. And as sure as I'm standing here, it's going to come to fruition that we're already seeing inflation. You're going to eventually see job losses because a tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans, tax on American people, tax on American companies. So I look forward to working with my great colleagues and again, collaborate and cooperate. And I just want to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Premier Ford. I'd next like to invite Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers to the podium.
Well, I think everything's been said, but I had the opportunity to be the leader of this organization a few years ago, and it made me proud to be a Wisconsinite and proud to be someone from the United States working with our Canadian partners. And whether it's the environmental issues, infrastructure, economy, you name it, we have made great progress forward. I'm concerned about that progress too. We're in an area of uncertainty as a country and as a world. And I am very, very hopeful that this organization can play a role in making sure that that uncertainty that you just heard about from other speakers becomes less of an issue. We are friends. We're allies. We're making great progress in some really important areas, and we talk about shipbuilding a lot over the last couple of days and how important that is. But environment issues around solving problems around sustainability, all those things are part and parcel of our world. But the uncertainty out of Washington, D.C. is a problem, and it shouldn't be a problem. There's no reason why countries can't resolve these problems. And so we're in difficult times right now, but I do believe that the work of all of us and all the people with us will get us back to where we need to be. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Governor Evers. And we'll now invite your questions. We'd ask if you do have a question to please raise your hand and be recognized. Identify yourself with your name, the media organization that you're representing.
Hi.
And we also have a microphone at the back that we'd ask you to use. And if the question is posed to a particular member of the group on the dais, please identify as such. Yes, sir.
Alain Laforêt, TVA. Sorry, Premier Ford, I asked my question in French. Pour M. Legault. Oui. Bon, M. Legault, on comprend que vous prêchez devant des convertis ici. Là. Ce sont des gouverneurs démocrates. Est-ce que vous espérez, au midterm, voir un changement avec l'administration Trump?
Bon, d'abord, il y a une rencontre de prévue entre M. Carney et le président Trump demain. Évidemment, on ne peut pas avoir d'attente parce que c'est toujours surprenant les résultats. Les midterms, c'est dans 1 an et demi. M. Trump a montré aussi qu'il est capable de contourner les chambres. Donc, c'est pas rassurant de voir la situation. Puis actuellement, comme le disait Doug, nos économies, là, que ce soit l'Ontario, le Québec, le reste du Canada, ont été affectées. Il y a des emplois qui se perdent, mais aussi il y a beaucoup d'investissements des entreprises qui ne se font pas à cause de l'incertitude. Donc, je ne pense pas qu'on peut nécessairement compter sur les élections de mi-mandat pour régler les problèmes. Il faut espérer que la pression qui va venir, quand même, là, les États qui sont représentés ici aujourd'hui, c'est des grands États, là, Pennsylvanie, et puis New York, et puis tous les grands lacs, c'est des grands États, donc qui représentent beaucoup d'Américains.
Cette semaine, vous allez présenter votre Constitution québécoise. Est-ce que c'est un moyen de réaffirmer votre souveraineté par rapport au gouvernement canadien et aux États américains?
Oui. Bien, j'aurai l'occasion, M. Laforêt, là, de répondre à ces questions-là un peu plus tard. Bien, écoutez, je pense qu'il faut trouver un juste équilibre. On a moins accès au marché américain, donc plus que jamais, il faut au moins compter sur le marché canadien de 41 millions de personnes. Par contre, bien, vous savez comment c'est important pour nous autres, notre autonomie, surtout pour défendre notre langue, défendre nos valeurs. Donc, c'est beaucoup de ça dont il va être question dans la Constitution.
Bonjour, Caroline Plante, La Presse canadienne, Canadian Press. A question for all of you. What are your expectations ahead of the Trump-Carney meeting?
You know, I'll be very blunt. You never know what comes out of a meeting with President Trump. He'll say one thing one day and change his mind the next day. Again, we need certainty. We need certainty for our economies. I know that 9 million Americans wake up every single morning to produce a product or a widget for Ontario alone. We want to grow that. We want to be there when the U.S. needs our energy, that 1.5 million Americans wake up with the lights on and business going because the energy we ship down there in New York and in Michigan and Minnesota, I want to ship them more energy. I want to send them critical minerals. As China has the market cornered, I want to focus on the critical minerals. We have more critical minerals than anywhere in the entire world. That our greatest friends and allies south of the border need. That's what I want to come out of the conversation. I don't want the Prime Minister in there getting bullied and telling them you're doing this, you're doing that. It's not going to work. It will never, ever work. Hopefully they can come out with a great deal, a fair trade deal for both sides of the border. Again, we're intertwined. You know, everything that happens, we have so many companies in Ontario. If I describe Ontario, this is how I describe it. If you could put all the headquarters in the world, I mean in the U.S., in one jurisdiction, that's Toronto and the GTHA area. So every major corporation that is in the U.S. has an office or a Canadian headquarters in Toronto and the Greater Toronto area. So hopefully it will come out with positive results. And I'm confident that the Prime Minister is going to go in there and do a great job. He's a smart business person. So let's see what happens.
Does anyone else want to speak to that?
But, of course, in the last few weeks, it didn't go in the right direction. Last week, Mr. En français, vous voulez? Ben oui. Écoutez, la semaine dernière, on a vu que les décisions de M. Trump ne vont pas dans la bonne direction. Après avoir augmenté les tarifs sur le bois, de 14 à 35 %. La semaine passée, ils augmentaient à 45 %. Donc, c'est sûr que ça va avoir un impact sur les emplois au Québec dans le secteur de la forêt. Déjà, on le voit en Ontario dans le secteur de l'auto. Donc, il y a des dizaines de milliers d'emplois qui se perdent actuellement au Canada. Donc, c'est inquiétant. Je pense qu'on ne se cachera pas là, qu'on a vu les résultats du deuxième trimestre là, qui étaient négatifs, décroissance du PIB. Donc, on espère que Mark Carney, demain, va réussir à convaincre M. Trump de reculer sur certains tarifs, de peut-être confirmer aussi ce qui s'en vient sur l'entente, le renouvellement de l'entente Canada, États-Unis, Mexique, parce que là, ça, c'est dû pour être renégocié l'année prochaine. Donc, beaucoup d'incertitudes, puis en affaires, c'est la pire affaire, l'incertitude. C'est même pire que les tarifs.
La prochaine question, s'il vous plaît.
Maybe some of the governors?
Then we'll take the next question after Governor Shapiro.
I will tell you as Governor of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where we have a strong and balanced trade policy and trading activity with Canada, roughly $14 billion in imports and roughly $14 billion in exports. Over 10,000 Pennsylvanians work in companies that are Canadian-based. I can tell you that we're very concerned about the policies of the Trump administration. It has made it more difficult for our farmers, and it's made it more difficult for our manufacturers and many in between. I hope the President of the United States has reevaluated his tough guy approach to Canada and remembered our shared history over the last 2 centuries, shared histories in terms of the inventions we've made together, shared histories in terms of the commercial activities that's benefited both sides of the border together, shared history on the battlefield of defending freedom together with one another. I hope the President remembers that. And instead of coming in and trying to bully the Prime Minister, actually sit down and work to hammer out a deal that lifts everyone up. This is not a zero-sum game. I don't believe that if a Canadian does well, a Pennsylvanian has to be worse off. I think there are ways that we can all be lifted up. We've shown that. To be fair, some of the trade deals 30 years ago did not benefit Pennsylvanians, and that's why it's important to negotiate new ones. But what is not helpful is the bullying. What is not helpful is failing to remember our shared history and the way we are intertwined. What is not helpful is the way in which the President has demeaned our neighbors in the North, suggesting that they should be the 51st state. I respect Canadian sovereignty, and I hope that tomorrow when this meeting occurs in the White House, respect will rule the day, that we will hammer out a trade agreement that works for both sides, and that Pennsylvanians can continue to work with our partners in the North to grow our economy, to protect our farmers, to expand our manufacturing base. The final thing I'll say is this: slapping a tariff on Canada, even for Pennsylvania companies that are based in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that source their raw materials in Pennsylvania, that don't rely on raw materials from Canada, the prices for those companies are going up. The capital needed to be able to expand is staying in the private sector's pocket, meaning they are not investing the kind of capital that is needed to grow and expand right now. And so by the President pushing the tariff button, he's not only alienating one of our most important global allies, he's driving up the cost for Pennsylvania farmers, driving up the cost for Pennsylvania small businesses, driving up the cost for Pennsylvania manufacturers, even those who are doing it in the President's mind the right way, note the air quotes here, by doing it based in America, sourced with American products, sourced with American raw material, with American workers. We're still seeing prices go way up because the President decided to push the tariff button and drive up costs on the American people. It is dangerous, the rhetoric he's engaged in, and his practices are making things cost more, and it is not in America's long-term interest, I believe, to have this fight with Canada. It will make things cost more and will undermine our unique relationship.
Next question.
Bonjour, ma question est pour M. Legault and for Mr. Ford. Concernant cette rencontre entre M. Carney et M. Trump demain, on comprend que le premier ministre canadien espère obtenir des assouplissements sur les tarifs sur l'acier. M. Legault, est-ce que vous posez la question à savoir pourquoi l'acier et pas l'aluminium? And Mr. Ford, are you hoping to get relief from tariffs on steel?
Ben, écoutez, d'abord sur l'acier, au Québec aussi, dans la transformation de l'acier, on a des impacts qui sont négatifs. Dans le dossier de l'aluminium, honnêtement, on ne comprend pas parce que il y a un équilibre entre l'offre et la demande sur l'aluminium. Donc, les grands perdants, ce sont les Américains. Donc, on ne comprend pas. Évidemment, je souhaiterais qu'on parle aussi du secteur de la forêt, parce que rendu à 45 de tarifs, c'est très inquiétant. Puis, bon, je ne veux pas parler pour Doug, mais sûrement qu'il souhaiterait aussi qu'on parle de l'auto. Donc, je pense qu'il faut parler de l'ensemble des tarifs, tout en espérant qu'il va y avoir un changement de cap de la part de M. Trump.
Well, I think it'd be beneficial to both countries if we saw some relief on the tariffs. We ship in billions of dollars of U.S. steel every single year, and we export steel as well. But for the strength of their manufacturing sector, strength of their military, we need to make sure that we have a fair trading deal when it comes to steel or any other products. In that fact, we have to focus on both the U.S. and Canada and come together and work together. That's what we need to do. You know, it's like our critical minerals as well. 60% of all products down in the U.S., be it aerospace, military, manufacturing, rely on high-grade nickel from Ontario. They rely on the aluminum that's coming from Quebec. The farmers in Pennsylvania, up in Wisconsin, rely on the potash coming in from Saskatchewan and the uranium coming from Saskatchewan into Ontario for the refining and then gets enriched down into the U.S. But the president has two choices when it comes to that. He can deal with his closest friend and ally, or he can deal with China and Russia. And it seems like he's given more love to China and Russia than he is his closest ally in the entire world. So hopefully this meeting, we can move forward and let's see what comes from it. Thank you.
As always, we have more questions than time. We have time for just two final questions. So we'll invite a question from another journalist, please. Thank you.
Bonjour, Jean-François Poudrier, Nouveau Info. I'll be asking questions on behalf of my colleagues at CTV for Premier Ford. Mr. Ford, you said again this weekend that you might remove Crown Royal from the shelves of LCBO. How can you justify a move that could cost jobs and revenues for LCBO?
Well, it's not going to cost jobs and revenues. The only people that cause jobs and revenues is Diageo, right? Who in their right mind, any business person with half a brain, would go after their largest customer in North America? Diageo, we do over $765 million, more than any jurisdiction anywhere in the U.S. or in Canada. And they want to close down a plant over what, $8 million of wages they think they're going to save? The LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world. And I'll use that leverage to make sure we send a signal that we are pulling Crown Royal off our shelves as soon as the last person leaves that plant. And they can deal with it. And then we'll look at Smirnoff's next, because we have great whiskey that other people can produce in Ontario, and they'll enjoy just as much as Crown Royal. That's what happens when you try to undermine the people of Ontario. These large corporations are going to be held accountable. It's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Final question?
I'll ask a question to Premier Legault. Premier Legault, you were here surrounded by governors and Premier Doug Ford. You all agree that the situation is putting a lot of uncertainty on all your economy, but what can you say to workers in Quebec that lost their job due to tariffs and may lose their job? Because you're not controlling what is happening right now and you're not controlling what's next.
Okay, je vais, do you want that I
That
go
would be
in?
great in English, yes.
In English, okay. So I will table a new economic vision by the end of the month, actual month. And like I've started saying, I don't want to scoop myself and give you everything today, but we'll put a lot of emphasis on Hydro-Quebec, so investing $200 billion for new production. Second, I expect to have some contracts from the federal government in defense. And we expect, same thing in Ontario, to sell more critical minerals. So we want to replace jobs that are lost right now by other sectors. We need also our governments, and I'm talking about provincial and federal governments, to put more emphasis in their orders for the Canadian content. I think it's important. I give you an example. Via Rail is ordering for more than $2 billion. We have to put Canadian content in the conditions coming from different governments. We want to push also for local purchasing. So we, and there are other ways that we plan to replace these jobs, but it's very important. The economy and the replacement of the jobs will become very, very important in the next months, especially if we cannot have a deal with Mr. Trump.
And your expectations for tomorrow's meeting between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump?
Very tough to say. Like Doug said, the guy is always surprise everybody. So we hope it's a good surprise, but I don't want to raise the expectation too high. But we really need to have more certainty about the future, because right now, like I said in French, even last week, we had new tariffs on lumber. So what will happen next week? What will happen with the renegotiation of the USMCA next year? We need to have certainty. I've been in business before, and the most important thing is to have long-term forecast about the market. And right now, it's total uncertainty, so we can see that private investment are really on pause everywhere in Canada. Oui, ben, je vais déposer une nouvelle vision économique qui fait suite justement aux tarifs par l'incertitude créée par M. Trump. Il y aura plusieurs sections dans la nouvelle vision. Évidemment, les investissements qu'on veut faire chez Hydro-Québec avec 2 booms économiques, la construction, de la capacité additionnelle, puis l'attraction d'entreprises. On s'attend avec les augmentations de budget importantes prévues au fédéral en défense d'aller chercher notre part des investissements. On s'attend aussi à développer beaucoup les minéraux critiques et stratégiques. Et puis, bien, comme je le disais au gouverneur américain en fin de semaine, on va avoir des décisions à prendre importantes parce qu'on parle avec des pays en Europe. Et bien là, on aimerait bien aussi regarder avec les Américains. Donc, et on veut aussi voir comment, dans nos appels d'offres, on peut privilégier davantage le contenu local, servir parfois de vitrine en étant le premier acheteur de produits. Donc, il y a... je vous demande d'être patiente, là, quelques semaines, on va déposer ce document-là. Ça fait 6 mois qu'on travaille là-dessus. Là. Le but, c'est de remplacer les emplois qui sont perdus par les tarifs et l'incertitude de Donald Trump.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. Materials related to this Leadership Summit are available on our website at www.gsgp.org. This concludes the formal part of our program. I'd like to invite the governors and premiers to take a ceremonial photograph. We have a tree that will be planted in the spring here in Quebec City. It's part of the goal that the governors and premiers have set to plant 250 million trees over the next 10 years. And we thank our friends at Tree Canada for providing us with this one. So if you could join me for the photograph, governors and premiers.